G'day guys, welcome to probably my favorite episode, and that's a big call. I keep saying this every week at the moment, but I'm really enjoying the content we're putting out there at the moment. And this one to me and to you is a little bit more meaningful. So we go very deep into 3 specific strategies around how to get from where you are to financial peace, freedom, and financial security in the future. And then we go very deep into the fundamentals of investing and like what the dream investment structure should look like. But then, as always, we come back to the things that are important to us and why we're really doing this and what we've learned through these experiences as well.
The beautiful thing is we've collectively got 18 years of full-time experience as property investors and buyers agents, and we have learned every lesson that there is to learn. We've seen the strategies that worked and the strategies that maybe held people back. We really dive into the history that we've stumbled across and the lessons that we've learned and how you can go out there and invest to maximize your return on investment and obviously live a life filled with freedom.
This is a very tactical podcast with like the things that we actually use day to day and that we've been using for the last 10 years to buy over $600 million worth of property for ourselves and our clients. It is very much real world things that if you implement them, you will be a 10 times better investor and achieve financial freedom significantly earlier in your future. I think before we even get into like the lessons that we've learned, the most important thing to remember is there's multiple ways through property to get to freedom. And I've personally tried a lot of them, and so have you, like renos, knockdown rebuilds, granny flats, subdivisions, duplexes, commercial, Airbnb, like absolutely everything, and just even buying and holding and hoping that things are going to work out.
And different entities, personal names, trusts, buying with JVs, friends, family, whatever it might be. Obviously there's super funds that you can buy within these days as well. It makes it feel a bit more complicated and overwhelming. But at the end of the day, I don't think it ever changes the fundamentals as to how we should invest.
And that's why before I even go on to like the things that we've learned or I've learned and the fundamentals of what a great investment looks like to me, I think taking a step back and going, here's 3 different ideas to go from where you are to financial freedom and a life filled with choices. The choice to spend the time with the people you care about and do what you love and find meaningful, purposeful work and a life that is aligned with your values and feels amazing for you. And I think the things I wrote down, from talking to over 6,000 investors now some of these people come in earning 70K per year. Others have come in earning millions and millions of dollars. Some of them are worth 100K and that's their savings in their bank account. Others that we've worked with are worth 25 million. I've worked with one dude that had 200 mil. So there's all sorts of layers of the types of conversations we've had. But the thing about having many of these combos is you start to see what's worked, because a lot of people come to us already owning a home or a number of investment properties that have done something. And I can't help but look at the portfolio and analyze it versus other marketplaces.
And the opposite end of the scale as well, the people that have come in that have, made a mistake and they, bought the wrong market or the wrong asset at the wrong time, and, they've held it for years and it's done nothing for them, and they come in with that feeling of like, I missed out on an opportunity, I spent my money here and nothing's happened, whereas had I spent the same amount of money there, I could have doubled my money. And it's like the opportunity cost that we lose by investing with emotion or getting advice from the wrong people a lot of the time as well.
Yeah, like almost all of the worst deals I've ever seen haven't actually been that person driven. They've been driven by like a trusted advisor or a family friend or like a spruiker or a marketer that's pretending to be the friend of the person that they're working with. So the first idea is the simplest, and I think it's actually the most effective way to create wealth through property. And that is simply to buy and hold really good stuff long term. And there's 2 concepts there. There's time in the market, where you just buy and hold for 30 years like all of our parents did and it works out. And then there's also timing the market, which I want to be in the market for a long period, but I also want to nail the timing. And I'll talk about that more in a moment. And I've done other videos on this recently, but I think the concept of just going, well, we're not one Australian market, we're 8 cities and territories, and then we're a whole bunch of major regional markets, and then we're a whole bunch of tiny regional markets, and then we're these weird little villages in between that. But what works with buying and holding is like, let's say you bought Sydney 12 years ago. Let's say you bought Brisbane 6 years ago, Perth 4 years ago, or Melbourne today. Like, that's the timing we're talking about, where a market is undervalued relative to its longer term history, and it has done less. So buying and holding is super effective. Every single one of the wealthiest people that I've ever met got over playing the game, and they tinkered in their life, and they just went for high quality assets in the right markets at the right time, and then held them longer term.
I find that most of our, let's call them more affluent clients, high net worth clients, this is what they do. They only buy houses in your big capital cities or your biggest regional markets, and they hold them for the long term. You know, these people are busy. They're working a job that requires a lot from them, or they're running a business that's asking a lot from them as well. So they don't have the capacity, they don't have the time to buy and add value, or to buy and sell and do all of these different things. You know, they're just wanting to buy, land bank, and collect the economic rent over time.
You know, when I was 24 and just starting out with my first couple of properties in Sydney and the Central Coast, when I was making 55 grand a year in IBM's global grad program, I thought, well, if I can flip a place and make 100K, I've just doubled my wage. But to a person that's earning 300K or 500K or a mil, it is not worth their time to make 100 grand with all of the pain. They'll be much better focused on like continuing to enjoy their lifestyle and invest that money in high quality stuff. And so there's a time and a place. And I suppose the second idea after buying and holding is for people like me. Like, this is much more a me orientated strategy. And I think the third one's more like a you orientated, is I want everything out of one asset. So I don't just want to buy and hope, and I don't want to just get great timing. I want both of those things. I want long-term capital gains. I want medium-term capital gains. I want short-term gains. I want to time the market, and I want to hold it forever.
And this isn't greedy. This is just savvy investing. It's like it's there for the taking. Why not take it?
It's value investing.
That's
It's
right.
Warren Buffett's model. It's like, get everything that you can out of the investment by understanding what you're buying fully.
And you've lost money on deals, and like you've made some mistakes. So it's like you know that feeling where you've worked so hard to save a deposit, to do the research, to do the due diligence, to take action, to buy the property, and then it not work out.
I literally sold a property, 3 months ago in Majimba on the Sunshine Coast, and I lost 200K.
Yeah, heavy.
And that was a property that I bought a few years before that. It was a stupid fucking emotional decision where I was driving home from the beach and I saw an auction sign with my family.
On the one day that wave was good.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then headed to the auction, was like, this place isn't good. What else is on realestate.com? Drove around, had a look at the next place, said to Lisa, it'd be cool to have like a little Airbnb holiday house on the beach for the family. And it was like
Small house,
tiny house, like 2.5 bedroom home.
everything else was good. It's just the suburb had already gone up at 80% the 3 years before it.
Yeah, I just didn't look at it like an investment. I looked at it as like a little beach shack for us. And then I got my wife to do a reno on it. So we put in a pool, a nice deck, a new kitchen, like cleaned it up. And she, gave me the bill, which was after COVID. And I was expecting it to be 100K reno, and it was 250 grand because I wasn't
Brutal.
on it. And so it was a really good lesson that, like, even as far along my journey as I am, you can make monster mistakes by not following fundamentals.
And I'm going to use you as a bit of a test dummy, because like a lot of people want to do that Airbnb. Oh, I love to have a place in a holiday destination that I can go and spend time with my family. But when people don't even know the Sunshine Coast, like everyone thinks Gold Coast and the Sunshine Coast is the same place, which is wild. But when they look up Sunshine Coast, they're not typing in Majimba.
No.
They're typing in Mooloolaba, Noosa, Coolum, Maroochydore, Caloundra, all of those well and truly before they type Majimba. So when they're looking, it just doesn't come up on the radar. And I think a lot of people may have this emotional attachment to a particular location, or it's just where they can afford to buy. But with this Airbnb, compared to the other one that you have, it's just worlds apart because the suburb was wrong.
Look, what's interesting about that, like in terms of the actual numbers, is both of them, Mooloolaba and Majimba, do equally well. And by the end of it, as it started to build some traction, and I had to change it from like it was called Salty Days Majimba slash Markula, because Markula gets a
Markula
huge,
gets
much more
heaps.
search. So
Yeah.
like I figured out the game, but I suppose stepping back from that, it was under a flight zone. The suburb had some flood affecting stuff. It was at the very, very top of a cycle, and I hadn't bought for a while, and I was just excited about getting something. It was an emotional buy. The living room was small. It needed a monster deck. It needed a pool. It needed a full reno, or we wanted to give it a full reno. And I just didn't have my investor hat on. And I suppose why this second idea for people is so important is like if you want to get long term, medium term, short term growth, hold it longer term and time the market. But then on top of that, for me, I want exceptional cash flow, and I want as much tax benefits as the government will
Absolutely.
legally give me. And so the strategy for that, for me, is more like high quality houses and granny flats. So it could be in two forms. It could be buy a home and build a granny flat when you're ready to. Dual income's phenomenal. Or it could be buy a piece of land or knock down a home and build a beautiful home with a granny flat under the same
Which
roof
you've
line.
done all of them.
I've done all of them. And that's probably my most preferred strategy because I'm getting every single one of the things that I want out of a long-term investment.
And what I love about this one is it caters for everyone. You know, it caters for the wealthy investor that, you know, wants everything. And, you know, so do your everyday mums and dads, you know, people in my position. You know, it's a great opportunity because when we looked at the statistics and the reason that, you know, you, Ryan, myself, Ryan from On Property sat down and it's like, well, we saw that article that was like, out of the 100% of people that are of age to buy an investment property, working age, only 20% of the population actually invests. And then when you look at that 20% of investors and consider it to be 100%, less than 4% of investors ever get past 2 investment properties. So there's a harsh reality to the world and investing in property because you see all these podcasts and videos, buy 10 properties, buy 100 properties. You see these guys online are like, I own $30 million worth of property. I own $100 million worth of property. You know, good work, mate. That's not relevant to the average person. So knowing that it's super rare for people to even get into an investment property, let alone get past 2. Well, how can we make sure that they change their world for the better and they increase their net worth and they've got freedom and choices in the future? They can generate an above average passive income because you're getting 4 incomes from just 2 properties. And, you know, you are targeting capital growth. You are targeting and manufacturing cash flow and you are generating some tax benefits. So, you know, I just love that it really fits every single type of investor because you can buy them from $500,000 in Melbourne right now, or you could, you know, go and do it for millions of dollars somewhere else if you want to.
And that strategy you're talking about is the 2 properties and 2 granny flats, the financial freedom. So effectively, you go out there and buy one home and build a granny flat, and then you go out there and buy another home and build a granny flat, and the combination of rent in 15 years' time, you know, represents over $100,000 per year of cash flow. And if you get the right properties in the right suburbs, in the right markets at the right time, 15 years from now, you should theoretically double your money as well, or the value of the property, if it grows by 5% per annum, will double. And so if you're starting with, you know, $1.5 million worth of, you know, 2 houses and 2 granny flats, theoretically in 15 years, it's worth 3 mil. And then 15 years after that, it's worth 6 mil. And this is what can make the average person so financially secure, financially peaceful, and financially free in the future.
And even if you only can do, like you can only afford to do one in your personal name, you know, there's other ways to maybe look at trying to get the other one as well, because I know a lot of people really struggle with the fact of like, how can I have my home plus 2 investments? You know, I'm already struggling with my repayments. How can I even comprehend the idea of going there? So just surrounding yourself with a good quality team of advisors, understanding the system at a bit of a deeper level so you can use those benefits as well.
Yeah, like a good mortgage broker, a good accountant, maybe a financial advisor or a property advisor can be worth their weight in gold to help you navigate that. Like I was speaking to a lady yesterday, got a great business, got hit really hard in the construction industry in Melbourne during COVID. They've basically got back on their feet. They own a $1.2 million property in Melbourne that's got 600K debt. And she's like, I really want to buy 2 properties. And she's sitting on 200K in a self-managed super fund, which is really just cash at the moment because she doesn't know what to do with it. And I was like, well, if you talk to your accountant, maybe you could use that 200K to go buy a 600 grand home in super, and then maybe you can use 150 grand of your equity to buy an investment outside of super. And she's like, well, I was just thinking I would buy them both outside of super. I'm like, well, completely get that, but there's options there where like you're theoretically not using like your own cash to go and do it and putting your family, because you had 3 young kids under 11, at a really intense financial position if the business doesn't work out again. The third idea, so the first being buying hold, the second being buying and getting capital growth, cash flow and tax benefits, which is like a house in granny. The third idea could be more short term. So that could be either timing markets, like buying Perth 4 years ago and selling it now for 50% profit, or Brisbane. Or it could be what you've just completed, which is like buying a property, adding a second property on it through either a duplex or a subdivision, selling one, keeping one, selling both, or keeping both, but really manufacturing and making equity. And a lot of people used to do this through renos, but there's just no money in short-term
Not after
renos
COVID.
anymore. Not after the market's gone up 100% since the GFC.
Yeah.
That's a start of a cycle thing when you buy something dirt cheap and then flip it, but it's not an end of cycle thing, and we're close to the end now.
That's right. And obviously, if you're a tradie, if you're a carpenter and you can do that yourself and not have to pay other people to do the work, there may be better margins in it. But for me personally, I've just finished my first project like this, and it was, probably the most affordable duplex that you could do in a major metro market right now, or a good quality metro market. And that's something that I was excited about going through, buying a house, battle axing and building a new one in the backyard, separating the titles. So I've got 2 separate properties on 2 separate titles, and I can rent them both out separately. I just like having the capacity to add some value to a property, but it is way more expensive. That's a minimum $1.2 million project cost in the current market. But, take that a lot further. If you're doing stuff like some of our friends up here on the Sunshine Coast, on Oceanic Boulevard, they're spending $6, $7, $8 million on these massive, buying a waterfront property, bulldozing it, spending $4 million on a duplex build. Like, you can really take that as far as you want to go. You drive through the Sutherland Shire these days, and every single main road, it's nothing but duplexes these days compared to, 20 years ago when you drive down to Cronulla from Engadine and it's just all the old 3-bed, 1-bath red brick houses. So, as zonings change, as population growth rates increase, governments, local councils are forced to add new supply to the market, and it's one of the, greatest ways to kind of manufacture some value to the property as well.
And what I think made yours more successful than mine, for example, so I did a subdivision years ago. I bought the piece of land. I think it was $600,000 for 1,200 square meters, like on the beach at Clontarf, like just off the beach. And I bought it 2 days before Christmas, and it had been on the market for ages, and the price dropped like 100K. And so I was like, shit, yeah. I just wanted to get my piece of land cheap so that I could build a brand new house in Granny Flat. And that was the financial position I was in. And I think I sold one piece of land for like $400,000. And that meant that I got my piece of land for like 200 and something K, which was a good buy. But what made yours great was you bought it, 3-4 years ago now, in the 4s. Now the property on its own would be worth high 7s.
Yep.
And so with that little bit of time with this strategy, instead of like flipping because it's fun and it's sexy and everyone wants to be like a micro developer, you were patient and the market doubled the value of your property. And then so when you came to duplex it, it was exponentially more valuable. And I think that buy and sell strategy doesn't have to be the way that I did it. which is short-term thinking, making 50K here, 200 there, 100 there, and then paying all this tax on it. It can be more strategic, buying the right asset, waiting for the market to do some of the heavy lifting, and then ending up with a much better outcome down the line. Because you've just made as much as 3 or 4 projects from one deal by being 3 or 4 years patient.
It's been like 100% profit in 4 years. And
Yeah.
there's only one way to do that, and it is putting all of the lessons that we've learned over the last 15 years, for you, 8 years for myself, and implementing that. So it's buying the fundamentals, it's buying the metro market, it's buying as close to the city that I could afford, it's buying the best suburb that I could afford, it's buying the quiet family-friendly street, it's buying the rectangular block with the wide frontage, it's buying the affordable house on a good family-friendly street with no red flags, no flooding, nothing like that. It's buying something that's livable as it stands right now, or, you know, even if I were to spend 10 or 20 grand on it, you know, getting it livable right now. So you're buying it, you're land banking and then holding it. And that property was negatively geared. So fortunately I had some tax benefits in negative gearing for those first few years while I held it and let the market do what it did. And then obviously I can leverage off the equity in that property to complete the project as well, so it doesn't cost as much of my own money. And so then you do that, you build the property out the back, you manage your team of advisors, working really, really closely with town planners, surveyors, engineers, certifiers, builders, banks, like everybody, property managers, real estate agents, really managing that whole project so it comes together as quick as you possibly can. And then on the back end of it, you've got equity uplift, you've got cash flow, you've got more tax benefits, you've got a positively geared asset. So, you know, obviously learning these lessons and not investing with emotion, but investing with the lessons that we've learned has allowed us to generate an incredible above average return on investment.
And I think this is the trap that I got caught in when I was younger, that more money, more success, more, you know, this goal, this achievement, that achievement, this next property, you know, that constant cycle of dopamine, like more calendar management or more spreadsheet management, or checking in with my spreadsheet every night, or writing out my like goals every single morning, or having them on the desk and on the phone and on the computer. Like all of that stuff, the vision board serves a purpose. But if we strip it all the way back to the simplest form, like, and I think Bruce Lee says this as well as anyone, like it's the daily decrease, not the daily increase. Hack away at the unessential. And we had that on our board in our office for what, 3-4 years,
Yeah.
because it took me that fucking long to get it. And I should probably put it back up again right now. But I just think this concept that you've just identified of like doing things well and with a system, and like there is a art to property investing, and that's the flavor, like that's the design, that's creating something beautiful, that's creating something that the market has yet to see. But there is an absolute science, and I'll go into like the science that I've figured out in this market, which is similar to yours. But I think the big rock there is remembering why we're doing it. Like that subdivision was heaps of fun. Like I've just watched you go through it. I've been watching all the videos like a fan, just all the way through. I know you were down there like last week and checking out the like almost finished product.
Yeah.
And it's cool. Like it's absolutely epic. But what it will do for your family and your choices and your future, like you've basically earned 2 to 3 maybe plus years of after-tax income in 9 months. And I think that's important, like that it's going to give you 10 years of your working life back, that one project. This one project is a stepping stone onto the next two, and the next two gives you 20 years of your working life back. And it's what is it really about? It's really about that.
Absolutely. And just remembering that throughout the process as well, because it is a lot and there is a lot of moving parts and it can get stressful and overwhelming at times. But coming back to that why am I doing this? Well, it's to give me and my family more freedom to spend time with one another. It's actually reducing my stress at like in the long run as well, medium to long run.
Short-term pain, longer-term gain, like not in a hustle mentality way, but in a fucking real way.
And I was grateful as well. Like I was grateful because there's so many things that I was fortunate to have, which was, yes, I follow those fundamentals, but I personally, Simon, couldn't have gone up to the local council and said, hey, let me subdivide this land prior to those zoning changes. So the good fortune of, buying in the area that was experiencing population growth, knowing that what had happened in Sydney, what had happened in Melbourne is inevitably going to happen in Brisbane. And, there was obviously some strategy there, but it was just luck at the end of the day that the zoning changed in the period of time that I was planning to do a project on that property as well. So it's like, I say this all the time, the goddess of luck favors men of action. So, I had to expose myself to that luck, but at the end of the day, I had no control over that.
And this is a big thing. Like, I'm reading a book at the moment. It's like along the lines of design your dream or live your dream. Just as a bit of a, going back to some of those fundamentals, and he talked about this. There's obviously action, there's faith, there's like fortune working out for you, there's luck working out for you, there's timing working out for you, and there's a whole team around you, and there's bloody hard work there as well. And there's so many things that go into creating successful investing. And I think this, and what I really want to get along to people by the end of today's potty, is just you can improve your luck, as Ti says, like in Rhythm and Flow, like prepare for the next opportunity. And this is the preparation. And so some of my things now from everything that I've learned is Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane.
Yep.
Why? Because you and I luckily stumbled on a Homely article 7 years
Ages ago now, yeah.
Maybe
the data was done in 2016.
So 16, 17 we found
Yep.
it. Wow. And it looked at Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and Perth over a 46-year data set year on year. And like you and I being us, we just averaged it.
Yep.
Sydney done 9.6% a year, Melbourne 9.5 and Brisbane 9.7.
Perth 8.2.
Perth 8.2. And so,
which was, there was no, like, even you talk to ChatGPT, you search the internet, you're not getting that historic data from anywhere.
Can't find
so
it.
It's like we need the lessons from history, and that gave us it. But it's so hard to find that year-on-year increase in the median house price, change in percentage growth rates.
It's very difficult, and CoreLogic have it, and they've been tracking it for a long time, but they don't give it in table format because it's a lot of their IP.
Cotality now. Coality?
Oh, it's changed its name.
They've changed their name to Cotality.
Sounds a bit more like AI.
Maybe. But yeah, anyway, we should probably start saying that moving forward.
Yeah, what's it called?
Cotality.
It's cool. I'm getting so modern over there for like a bunch of legends. But yeah, I suppose like that was one thing that I really took. And then Simon Presley from Propertyology recently did an analysis of 50 years of Australian history. And he found that Australian houses have done 8.2% per year on average countrywide.
Is that 50 years?
50 years.
And then obviously when you read Mastering the Australian Housing Market by John Lindemann, he looked at 100 years and it averaged at 11%.
So even if it does 5%, like let's say you spend a mil today, 5% a year for 15 years, you'll have 2 mil. 5% a year for 30 years, you'll have 4. It just keeps on being like that. Like 5% for 45 years on $1 million spend, you'll have an $8 million asset.
I think, something that needs to be understood as well is like just the way that this system works. Like we operate in what I like to call the capitalist democratic system.
Did you create that?
I definitely did not. But that capitalist system, it obviously incentivizes people that are bringing value to the world. But essentially what happens in this system is all economic benefits through society will always trickle into the most valued assets, which is land and precious metals.
Yeah.
Because that's what people believe in. I've got a personal theory about precious metals. Once they start mining asteroids, it's going to change the game.
There'll be like more supply.
NASA found an asteroid that's floating through space that would make every single person that lives on the planet a billionaire if they were to mine all the gold on it.
Really?
Yeah, it's just wild. So that obviously increases supply, and when you increase supply, you'll see prices drop. But anyway, so what I believe is that land is the resource that we all want. Like people want land, no matter if you're a wealthy Australian or if you're living in the favelas of Bali or if you're living in, the Ganges in India. Like everybody wants their own slice of the pie. Everybody wants their own piece of land. So what happens is all of these economic benefits will trickle through the economy and end up in the land values. So, you think about COVID when they gave away all these stimulus packages, access your super early, job seeker, job keeper. We saw all of this liquidity pushed into the market, which smashed up all asset prices.
Rents, house prices, gold, stocks, crypto.
So just recognizing that fundamental that so long as we operate within this system, land will continue getting more expensive over the long run.
I will say something about that because I think it's so important to understand it. And both of us have like followed a whole bunch of different people from different perspectives, read books, potties. Just I read blogs on this stuff too.
It's what I love it for some weird reason.
Yeah, it's just interesting to understand the system that you're in because I've talked about this before. We have three choices, and I've lived all three. One is get financially free and get it fast so that you've got true freedom. Work the system till you're 65, 67 and a half, 70 and get on the pension. Or don't do either of those things and just live your whole life on the dole and hope that they don't ask you to come in more than 3 times a week to like job search or whatever you've got to do for that. And I did the Centrelink thing at uni. I've done the working to financial freedom thing, and I've also done the busting my ass for 20 years at work and going, hey, I don't really want to, it's not that I don't want to work. I love work. I think it's part of why we're all here. I just don't want to have to work for 45 years, you know what I mean?
I think it depends on the work that you're doing. So like there's a saying, right, where progress equals happiness. And so if you're doing something that you feel as though is meaningful to yourself or to the greater good or to society, whatever it might be, and if you're improving and you're getting a little bit better at what you do, then that's going to make you happy. So there ain't nothing wrong with working. It's just depending on what you're doing with that work as well. So try and find more meaningful, purpose-driven work that's in alignment with your values, and then you're never going to work a day in your life because humans just crave to do something.
Yeah.
They crave progress, and when we are progressing in life, we feel better about ourselves.
Without a doubt. And, one of the guys in our team, Hayden, came up with this incredible concept, which is financial peace. And so
that was like a penny drop moment.
I thought I had to own my properties outright and have 100 or 200 grand a year of passive income outside of my job to be free. And then I realized that I could accumulate 2 houses and 2 granny flats, and most people can within 5 years. And once I've got them, there is a time delay between then and having those owned outright for life.
A bloody big one.
But you've got them locked in, which means you're going to be peaceful, you're going to be secure, and one day you'll be financially free. And that concept of you don't have to, me and Ryan from On Property talked about this for a long time off camera, you don't have to be free to feel it.
No.
Freedom is a choice now. Joy is a choice. I was listening to a potty the other day and this guy was like, I just decided that I'm going to be the happiest person in the world. He's like, someone has to be, so why not me? And so he just researched joy and he aligned his life with the things that have the happiest people, the most happiness is a moment, joy is a continuation. And he's like, I'm just going to be that dude. I'm just going to work towards that. And that's his whole life mission. And he if the average happiness level measured by Harvard's here, he's off the Richter because you want to get healthier, train and eat well. You want to get more joyful, do things that make you joyful, you know what I mean?
That's right. There's a saying from a monk that I listened to in a podcast recently, and he was saying that people believe that a future present state is going to make them happier than their current present state, which is just...
That's the whole trap of life. That's the whole game that we're in. It's surprise.
It's all it is. All it is a belief. It's you believe that when I attain this, I will be that.
Yeah.
And it's not the truth. We know that that's not the truth. So it's just scaling back to this moment now and just being yes, I want to plan for the future because nobody's going to do it for you. And yes, I need to set and achieve goals because that is progress. That will make you happier. But at the end of the day, bringing it back down to now to realize that financial piece and just going, I've got everything that I need to be and live a great life. But obviously I want to continue improving, but that future state is not going to make anybody any happier.
Yeah. I talked about this recently on another one, but job sits somewhere within purpose, hopefully, which somewhere sits within calling. And it's it's all wrapped up, but we overemphasize job and we miss asking the question, like, what would make me fulfilled?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are my values? Like, what would my dream life look like?
Mm.
I ask people this almost every day. What would your life look like 5 to 15 years from now if everything worked out for you?
Mm.
Charlie Rocket style, if everything was manifesting for you and the world was conspiring for your absolute best, which I believe it is. But I also believe that to become your best, you have to go through shit
Mm.
and you have to have challenges and you have to grow through those challenges, because those challenges are setting you up for, like, well, how much can you handle for the person that you're supposed to become? I can't give you, I suppose, like, spiritually, I can't give you everything now because it will be too much and you're not ready for it. So there has to be a path, and that's why children play on their back, open up their hips, then crawl and strengthen their core, and then they start getting up and down and squatting and building like their glutes and quads. Like, I mean, and it's all part of what they need to stand and then fall and then slowly, like, toddle around and then eventually run and then sprint. And it's all part of a journey, but we don't take that approach to the rest of our lives. And you and I have been talking about this at the moment.
And I think it's a beautiful tangent around to back to what we were trying to get at as well, which is like, why Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane? It's because that's where the people are.
That's where it's kicked ass.
Yeah, that's where it's performed best in the past. Why that will change, I don't know. I was talking to a guy yesterday, and he said, we were talking about the Perth property market, and he's like, yeah, I just feel as though this time it will be different. And
Heard
my
that a few times
my response
before.
is, why will this time be different?
I heard you say that, and I was laughing through the wall. I was like, "Fuck,
it's
big question."
but
I
and
liked it.
neither of us had an answer because none of us can predict the future.
Mm.
Alls we have is the history. And, fortunately, we spend probably too much of our time studying the history, so we can, what does Phil say, remember the future.
Mm.
And so it's those big markets that have performed well, and that's where the people are. That's where the people are going to continue going, because you can get a great job there. You've got a great lifestyle there. You're going to be surrounded by good community, good access to healthcare, good access to education, good access to lifestyle factors, fun things, national parks or beaches or, shopping centres, whatever it is that floats your boat.
Yeah.
It's going to continue concentrating in those regions. But what I would say as well is, like, I love the major regionals as well. And I'm personally a little bit more excited about some of those major regionals. And, you look at Byron Bay, that's smashed the performance of Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane. You look at Noosa, smashed the performance of Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane. You look at Burleigh Heads, smashed the performance of Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane. So there is these regional markets that are like kind of diamonds in the rough that also, can rise on a similar level as those big capital cities as well.
Yeah, and if you've got $2 to $5 million, then let's talk about them.
That's it. Yeah, that's what I was going to say later in the potty as well. It's like,
affordability is a thing too.
yeah, that's a reality.
And this is the thing, as markets have gotten more expensive, like, I think something that you pointed out before, what COVID has given us in a beautiful 5-year way is a sense of what happens over a 100-year time frame. And that is, they pump money into the system, everyone feels great for a moment, and then everyone goes, shit, everyone's got money, let's just charge a little bit more. Interest rates can go up, energy price can go up, petrol prices can go up, rents can go up, goods and services can go up, and then all of a sudden we've gone past the point of good right now. But slowly over time, these goods and services will sit at a stable price, and wages will come up and we'll feel wealthier again.
Let's hope so.
100%.
For everyone.
It's just the same old cycle.
That's it.
We've been through it thousands of times in
That's
history.
it.
But I suppose Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, then for me, within 20 k's of the city or 2 k's from the beach, if I can afford it.
That's right.
I couldn't afford those in the past for most of my journey as an investor, but now that I can, I will go for them. On top of that, 600 to 1,000 square metre piece of land, for the simple fact that if zoning changes, they're the blocks with the highest likelihood of that happening. Larger homes, personally, is my strategy now. Like, I like 4 and 5 bedroom homes. I always have. I like quality pockets of the city. So if you're going Brisbane or Perth or Adelaide, there's no Brisbane market. There's 423 suburbs in Brisbane. And within that, there's 5 areas: north, central, south, east and west. And if you've got the ability to choose the higher quality pocket, then just go for that if you can. quality suburbs, of the 400 and something suburbs we've just analysed in Brisbane, there is probably 350 that you and I wouldn't even touch right now, unless someone was going to buy me the property and I could just have it. But there's, 100 or less than 100 odd suburbs that look fantastic still. And then within that, like you mentioned, quality streets, quiet streets, high average household incomes, low vacancy rates, good historical averages with really shitty 10-year growth rates is the number one silver bullet. And I've been trying to explain this to people for 10 years. This is the way that we do our suburb selection. And I've still never heard another person except for Jeremy Shepherd kind of talk about it. It is a fucking silver bullet. Like if I just did one video for the rest of my life on there's so many vids on how to stock pick and people follow it. But how to property pick is like an easy thing.
Like, sorry, just to interrupt there. Like, we know that 50-year data, which was 9.6 in Sydney, 9.7 in Brisbane, 9.5 in Melbourne. If it's above that, it's probably overpriced. If it's under that, it's probably affordable and it's got more room to grow.
Yeah, so when we started to buy Gold Coast, Sydney, Brisbane, Townsville, these markets had averaged like between 1% and 5% per year. A lot of people lately have been like, why are you looking at Melbourne so much? And it's because the 8-year data set is showing me suburbs with 2 to fucking 4% growth within 30 k's of the city.
That's it.
I've bought Sydney, I've bought Central Coast, I've bought Wollongong, I've bought Newcastle, I've bought Goldie, I've bought Sunny Coast, North, South, East, West, Central, Brisbane. I've bought Townsville. I fucking know. I watched Perth, I watched Adelaide, I've watched Melbourne. I know for a fact that it doesn't stay undervalued for long. And
a lot of these,
you get a once in a 20-year opportunity to get them.
I've wrote a few things of what I avoid.
And
what I avoid, I believe everyone else should avoid as well. But like 2 things that I wrote was buying with emotion and following the crowd. So
100%.
like people will come up with all of the reasons why not to invest in Melbourne. And when they tell me these things, it's just positive reinforcement as to why I should invest in Melbourne.
And you and I both know, sorry to interrupt you there, that almost the only other thing outside of 10-year averages that actually matters is vacancy rates. And then on top of that, markets don't run until they've done 10%. And so go look at the data set, look at when Perth did its 10% year, or Adelaide did the first year, or Melbourne did, or Sydney did, or Brisbane did. What happened for like the 2 to 5 years after that? People are sheep, man. Like I wish we weren't, but we follow each other into like the market. It only runs after like there's confidence. It's like, oh, it's finally working. It's back. Let's have a look at it. And then it's normally 3 to 5 years before the average person, not the people listening to this, are in the market after it started running.
That's
and
it.
By then, you and I are like most of the time exiting those
Exiting out.
markets and going into the new one.
Yeah, it's a really difficult thing to overcome because we are emotional people, and that has helped us in so many ways throughout our life. But when it comes to investing, you just have to take those biases out of the equation and really just focus on the numbers. Like, I think a prime example of this is when we started investing in northeast Brisbane around the Redcliffe Peninsula, the amount of pushback and the amount of reservation that there was around those suburbs at the time. And, since then we've doubled the money of, hundreds of our clients.
I used to be on the phone to these people 10 years ago because we've bought almost 600 million bucks in Brisbane now. And I'm showing them a home, a couple of houses from the beach. Actually, untrue. There was Oxley, and then between Oxley and Victoria Ave, which is probably between 400 and a K to the beach, 1.2 Ks. I'm showing them houses for 290K and getting pushback, and they're like, well, why is St Kilda worth 2 mil? And why is Cronulla worth 1.5, 2 mil?
That's the disconnect.
And I'm like, I didn't have all of these tools at that time and this understanding of history or Phil cycles or 10-year averages to go, this is why. But I did have I've seen it go in Sydney. I've seen it go in Wollongong, Newcastle, Central Coast, Gold Coast. And there was almost an element back then of like, just wanting to shake people and just go, this is a fucking $2 million asset that some reason you're buying for 300K right
Yeah.
now. And it's much easier now that everyone's made $1 million.
But those opportunities are still out there. You know, it's no longer 300 grand anywhere in the country, unfortunately. But, you know, the same thing happened down in Logan when we started buying down there. You know, oh, this is, you know, the crime capital of Australia. Maybe it is.
280K properties in Woodridge. I'm like, this is better than Bitcoin in the next 5 years.
And now we feel getting some of the same pushback when it comes to Melton out in West Melbourne, which, you know, is only 40 k's from the Melbourne CBD, less than an hour to drive to the Melbourne CBD. Yeah, it's in a regional area. Yeah, there's lots of land around it to be developed, but
It's 35K from the city for 450K. Like, it's going to be all right.
it's going to be all right. You get really good yields there. You get big blocks of land. You get all of these fundamentals. So, you know, it's just hard, but I think we all love to back a winner at the end of the day. So it can be tough. You know, when you're on that hot streak in the casino, you're going to keep going red, right?
I actually fucking hate backing a winner. Like, I always, as a kid, even backed underdogs.
Tall poppy syndrome.
And I just think it's like, I just don't vibe on I just got that part of human nature. Like, you too, like, I don't go to the same drama as most people. And anyone listening to this is clearly the same. Like, they're clearly in a place where they're like, I get what 60 years of working looks like. And if 80% of those people are going to end up on the pension, and there's countless tradies, solicitors, engineers, IT people, business owners that we work with. And the most common thing they say is, when I look at people that are 30 years older than me in my industry, I get it. I completely get it. And we work with people of all ages, but they're like, I don't see the joy and happiness and my purpose in what this looks like if I stay this way. So I need a plan B. And, you know, as we continue on here, I like areas with lower percentages of renters, although all of my best performing properties are near the city and the beach, which sometimes have a lot of renters in them. Good infrastructure is important, right? The thing that people, particularly in Adelaide, Brisbane and Perth, underestimate, that you and I don't because we grew up in Sydney, is what happens when the city gets to 5 million people. So the most expensive suburbs in Sydney used to actually be away from the infrastructure because the infrastructure sucks and it's where all the druggos and the housos were.
That's it.
And the main roads were. Now the most expensive suburbs are walking distance to the train and properties because no one can get anywhere in the car anymore and the infrastructure just isn't good enough. So I think infrastructure, particularly if you're buying the secondary cities or regional markets, is so important. Or just a short drive to it, a 5-10 minute drive is acceptable to a train, but you want to be somewhere near one.
Well, the reason for this, in my opinion, is the zoning changes in those areas where there is high, like a lot of infrastructure, train lines, shopping centres, whatever it might be. The zoning around those areas are likely to change because people want that proximity to the public transport options. So, you know, you look at like Sutherland as a bit of an example, and everything that's happened.
Sydney.
Yeah, in South Sydney, and everything that's happened around that train line, and it just increases the price per square meter. And if you had a house, a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house that was sitting on a 1,000 square meter block, and now that house has been bulldozed and an 8-story apartment with 20 apartments now occupies that 1,000 square meters of land, then, you know, you've increased the price per square meter quite dramatically.
Exactly. And I think trains, schools, unis, hospitals, main roads are all important.
Yep.
I will say it, but we don't have to. Like, don't buy next to cemeteries, shopping centres, on major arterial roads or bus routes if you can afford to. Definitely not on train lines. Definitely not backing directly onto schools or like rough parks if you can help it. Like, just do what every single mum and dad for the last 20 generations in Australia has done that's worked out. And as you said, like, the land will take all the gains, and the quality land close to the things that are important to people will take the gains. And we've seen that post-COVID. People have gone flooding into the areas that have incredible lifestyles and away from the areas that are like, actually, this 1-bedroom fucking lifestyle ghost town in Melbourne or Sydney because everyone bounces out of these areas after work is not where I want to be anymore. Like, it's not the dream. It's just a necessary part of a uni student, an international student, or a foreigner's journey to have that lifestyle for a period of their adventure, but that's not their dream either.
That's right. And I think all of these are in an ideal world, like if
This is
all
the
stars
ultimate
are,
wish list.
that's
Yeah.
the ultimate wish list. And you know, at the end of the day, if you don't have an 800K budget, you're probably not going to be able to achieve any of those things right now. And so there is some concessions or sacrifices that I'm more than willing to make, you know, which might be going a little bit further from the CBD, maybe going for a slightly smaller piece of land, maybe going for the suburb that has a lower average household income or has a slightly higher percentage of renters, you know, going,
You've got to start where you are.
if you're a young professional and, you know, you don't consider yourself handy or you don't have the confidence to buy a property that needs to have some money spent on it through a cosmetic or a structural renovation, you know, it's okay to buy, you know, the newer, more modern 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom house that is on that 300 or 400 square meter block of land because, you know, whilst this is the ideal dream wish list, the rising tide lifts all ships, and you are going to see an increase of those property prices over time.
And 15 out of the properties that I've bought, almost sold every one of them now, would have not ticked any of those boxes and still doubled in value.
That's it.
And that's the most important thing. Like, if you just get a house or a townhouse in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, somewhere near the city, in a quiet street, that's 90% of this.
Yeah.
And then if you I'm OCD, and unfortunately that OCD washes all the way through our content and our business. But fortunately for the 3 people a week that you and I will choose to take on, they people get the benefit of, like, my most common conversation with someone is it's taking a bit longer than I thought. And I'm like, well, on our very first convo, when we talked about ideas, strategy, the market, and your new team of advisors that will take you to full financial freedom in the future, I said it could take 4 to 12 weeks because I could just go and buy anything. But I want to buy, I still fucking, even if someone's got a 500K budget,
We'll try and make it work.
I'm trying to get every single one of these things hit.
Yeah.
I can't help it because, like, our number one value is we really give a shit, like, we care.
And taking 3 months to absolutely crush it and nail it is so much
20-year
better
decision.
than rushing in and making a bad decision.
Well, I've made all the, like, luckily you made great decisions, but I've fucking cost myself like $5 million in gains from destroying it. So it's like, part of it's just, here's the art and science of property. Part of it's just like, I know what fucks it up for people and I don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
But on top of that, let's just say we'll continue to build out the wish list because why not know what best looks like?
100%.
Large backyards, flat blocks, open living, dining, kitchen, alfresco areas. And then why not get a bit of cash flow, add a granny flat, do a duplex, and get some mad tax benefits. And it's like, you know, there's only about 150 things that we said there that the ideal property should have.
It's so easy, but no, it's a lot, but like, you know, we're spending a lot of money, so you should expect a lot out of the back of it. Now, I'd like to add a fair few different things to there as well. Like, I agree absolutely with everything, but for me, I think there's 2 things with investing that everybody needs to have at the forefront of their mind. The most important part of investing outside of all of that is time in the market. The sooner you get started, the sooner you're exposed to that compound growth, the better your life will be in the future. So, you know, as brutal as that is, if you're getting started in your 20s or 30s, you are so far in front of the average person because you've got that time in the market, you've got multiple cycles, you've got decades to let it work out. Second to that, in my opinion, is timing the market. So not buying at the peak and, you know, buying as close to the bottom that you can or as close to that beginning of the rising side of the cycle.
Can I just interrupt?
Yeah.
You used to look at Homely,
Yeah.
HTW, every month.
Yeah.
Do you just want to explain what that is for people? Because it's hard for people to know that.
Yeah.
We analyse over 4,222 suburbs a week here.
Yeah.
But the average person can't look at 19 markets day by day. This was the way that we used to do it before we had AI.
Well, there's, you know, let's look at a clock, right? So you've just got a normal analog clock and, you know, 12 would be the peak of a real estate cycle. 3 o'clock would be a downturn. 6 o'clock would be the bottom. And then 9 o'clock would be rising. You know, based on the research that we've done, it appears from a bottom to a top lasts somewhere between maybe 6 to sort of 14 years. Perth maybe being 6 at the moment, where like Sydney has sort of been running forever, it seems, but realistically it's been about 14 years, right? And we sort of see that being at the peak of the market. So I sort of see right now Melbourne being around that 6 o'clock range at the bottom of the cycle based on history.
Darwin would be sitting there.
Yep, Darwin would be sitting there.
Some of the outer parts of Adelaide, Brisbane, and Perth would be sitting there as well.
Yep, sitting in there. And if not, somewhere between 6 and 9 o'clock, which is still a really good stage to buy in, obviously, as well. So, you know, identifying that. Now, HTW, they do a property clock and they put each of the major capital cities and major regional markets in that, but they are looking at more short-term indicators. They're not looking at long-term fundamentals like we are, but still, if you're learning about timing, it can be a good place to start.
I read that every single month for like 8 years, probably straight, and sometimes like the market that's at the top is at the bottom the next month.
That's right.
And so take it with a grain of salt. And what's great about the research they do, and I really like it, is they actually do a write-up of each individual market every single month.
And what's happening, like what...
Over the course of a year, it might be like one could be on infrastructure,
Yeah.
the next one could be on population, the next one could be on jobs and sectors, and it's just very, over the course of a year, you'll really get it.
Absolutely. And
Or
they
you
look
could
at
just
so
follow
many...
our 10-minute monthly market
that
update,
makes
and
it a
that
lot
would
easier.
make it a lot easier.
So timing the market, so important, as well as timing the market, time in the market, but then, you know, timing, and then obviously everything that you mentioned is the be all and end all. But there is a reality to the world. You've got obviously a small deposit, and then you're getting a loan from the banks, and the banks are only willing to loan you a certain amount of money depending on how much income you're bringing in. So, you know, going to the banks, figuring out what's your budget, and then aligning your budget to the market conditions. So if I had a choice, I would only be buying properties in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. I can't afford to spend $4 to $15 million on a property. So I'm like, well, I've got to make a sacrifice. So it's like working with what you've got and just being realistic to the fact that, okay, well, I've only got a $450,000 budget. Doing something may be better than doing nothing. So what is the best thing that I can do with this $450,000? And just trying to align that budget with as many of these fundamentals that you could possibly get.
And the best thing you can do is buy something as low maintenance as possible, hold it for 15 years and turn 450 to 9, turn 9 to 1.8, turn 1.8 into 3.6. And that's your next 45 years. Like, it doesn't have to be crazy, intense, stressful, overwhelming, or even all of these things. Although, as you get further along the journey, it's just like anything. You just get better at what you do over time and have more experience. And then your wins, like Warren Buffett wins a lot more regularly than a day trader from home. And it's just the experience and the time.
Well, I disagree. I think the reason that is the fact, it's, you know, it's a capitalist system. Money makes money.
Money makes
The more
money.
money you have to work with, the more money you're going to earn on the back. Like, you know, you talk about some of those duplex projects on the Sunshine Coast. It's like, you look at the percentage return on investment, it may not be that different to a cheaper one, but the money return on investment feels like a hell of a lot more. You know, you turn a fit $500,000 profit in 12 months. Like, you know, no matter who you are, that's an incredible win.
It's funny you say that, right? Because like there is the duplex in Brizzy where you can make 300 grand or so right now. But then talking to one of the top dogs who owns one of the biggest Ray Whites in Melbourne, it does about 50 sales a month. And he was sort of saying he's just done this duplex down on the Mornington Peninsula. The numbers look like Sydney did or Brisbane did a while ago. And he's like, I just made like 800K in 12 months. And I'm like, and that was just, and then he's like, oh yeah, I'm, you know, going to use that money to go buy $2-3 million houses in Essington. And then I'm going to, you know, 5Ks north of Melbourne. And he's like, once I've completed them, they will be worth $3 to $5 million each, and then I'll take that return, I'll do something else. I talked to this other guy the other day who lives in Brighton, 11 k's on the beach from Melbourne, some of the best schools in the entire city. He's like, yeah, we added one extra bedroom and the valuation went up 700K. He bought for $1 million. His house is now
Give me
worth
that value as
500K.
number.
He did, like, he spent 700K completely redesigning the whole home and making it beautiful. Okay. But it was like the difference between a 3 and a 5 bedder in his suburb is like $1 million. And it's like, so money does make money. And it used to be the most frustrating thing at the start of my journey, going, I know what I need to do. Like all of this stuff is logical, but I've got 300K to spend right now.
Yeah.
But that 300K property 15 years down the line is still worth 800 grand. And so it's still worked out.
And just don't compare yourself to where somebody with decades or years more experience than you is at. You know, you might hear these people tell their stories about what they're doing and what they've done. It's probably not relevant. So it's like, you know, talk to people that are at a similar situation to yourself. And it's like, talk to people that have been where you are at that point in life as well. Like if you're comparing yourself to somebody with 10 years more experience, 10 years more of earning, 10 years more of investing, it's apples and oranges.
We wouldn't expect like a 12-year-old kid to run into first grade of the Brisbane Broncos and get a hit put on them by a 120 kilo 25-year-old.
Right.
But that's what, I've never thought about it like that, but that's what we're doing as investors, and time heals all wounds. Like time will fix things and the strategy will get better. I think it's an important thing to say there because you can accidentally get caught up because every story online is either doom in the property space or absolute balling out winning. But I think there's a middle ground, which is what you and I are after, which is a small number of great properties that replace a base level of income between 100 and 200K a year for life. Whether you do that through buying and holding houses and granny flats or duplexes is irrelevant. The goal is sort of to accumulate either a big chunk of money that you can sell down in the future and live off, or a small number of properties owned outright that you can live off the income in the future. And the goal for me and for you is quality of life with the people that we care about, doing meaningful work with a small number of people each week and loving our lives outside of this office. And I think, obviously people find people that they relate to, and there's plenty of dudes with 60 to 300 properties online balling out. But it's that isn't the life or the lifestyle that I'm after.
No.
So set up a foundational strategy that will get you from where you are to where you want to be. And then I promise you'll still be alive and you'll still be young as fuck and go for what you want next from that new position.
That's right. Reevaluate and knowing that things are going to change over time and it changes way quicker than you would actually expect it to. But I guess a few things on this as well is like, what are some of the things that we avoid? So I mentioned, don't buy with emotion, don't follow the crowds. Like it is really important to do your own research and due diligence, but some of the things that I personally avoid and that are not for me, everybody's got to make their own decision, but I would never buy a house and land package in a new greenfield estate on the outskirts of a market. I would also never buy an off-the-plan unit or townhouse. I've unfortunately talked to too many people that have failed from doing these projects, and that's why I would personally avoid those ones. I know you can get great tax appreciation benefits. Holding a nice low maintenance property can be great, and maybe
sometimes it does work out too.
Yeah, exactly. Look at, Jackson, he bought in Harmony on the Sunshine Coast, a house and land package, but that was in the right estate, in the right location as well. So, everything needs to be assessed and you need to do that due diligence. But I think something else that I avoid personally is like regional hotspots. So like these small regional towns with less than 100,000 people that live there, that are considered to be a hotspot because they're cheap and there's a few people moving there now.
The rent looks sort of good now.
Like what I've found from studying these markets is you'll find, bigger booms, but bigger busts in these smaller regional towns and smaller metro markets as well. So I can't deal with that anxiety of the big booms and big busts. I just want a bit more consistency, smaller booms, but obviously smaller busts at the end of the day as well.
Yeah.
So they're some of the things that I personally avoid as well. Obviously you mentioned a bunch before in terms of like the market and the suburbs, and within those suburbs are things that you want to avoid. But on a more macro level, these are the things that I would never personally acquire myself.
I really love that, man. Like I hope, like this has been just great for me personally to sit down and go, here's some of the fundamentals. Like obviously we've got this on paper and it's kind of like, this is what we do. But I think it's just nice sometimes to talk about it from a personal perspective and to remind yourself, like, this is what works, this is why it works, and there's a reason that it works, and it's the economic system. And the system really, really rewards people that take action. And I was listening to a little Jim Rohn quote the other day just on YouTube stories, and he's like, you think the bill for investing is expensive? Wait till they give you the bill for not investing. And he's referring to like what savings looks like longer term versus any other asset class
I
in the
love
world.
that, eh?
And it's the truth. Like, there's another great thing going around Insta at the moment, and it's like easy decisions, short term, hard life, hard decisions, short term, easy life. And I get it, because the world has always rewarded people that can sit in the uncomfortableness of going against the grain, like you said, and moving into marketplaces at the right time. And it's how it is. And so most people go into markets that feel comfortable, that have already done 80% of their like 10-year growth rate, and they make a little bit at the top, and that's cool. But if you are the type of person listening to this that's like, fuck it, I don't want to be the 12-year-old running into a footy player. I want to be the best player in the state of origin team running into the fucking other side. And I want to compete, and I want to become great at this. And I want my team of advisors to all be that good. I want the quality of the people that I'm working with every day to be that good. And I want people to be able to lean on for the rest of their life, rest of my life, that are just there for you anytime you text them or call, like email them or call them. That is Pumped On Property. Like, what Pumped On Property is a tiny, bespoke, 2 to 3 people a week agency that will give more of a fucks than every other person in this industry combined, because I'm so OCD, and because every single one of us is just deeply wired to care.
You know, what I love is if we've got a community here of like-minded, value-aligned, goal-oriented, ambitious, driven people that just want the best for one another, want to have meaningful conversations with one another. You know, I just love it when I get a call or a text message from somebody that we bought a property for 5 years ago, and they're like, hey, just want to have a quick catch up and let you know where I'm at and where I'm heading. And it's like, you know, being able to surround yourself with people that are on a similar trajectory, that are on a similar path, that have similar values, that, you know, want the best for one another. It's just like, couldn't ask for anything better than that. And I'm so grateful that we've been able to design this and create that, and we get to live it each and every day.
Nah, thanks, bro. Love doing this with you. Hey.
You.
G'day, guys. My name's Ben, and I'm the director here at Pumped On Property. And I just wanted to say a massive thank you for watching our content today. Now, if you're thinking about buying an investment property in the next 3 to 12 months, then the team and I would love to offer you a one-on-one strategy session. In that session, we can talk about exactly where you are right now, where you'd like to be longer term, and we can deeply educate you on the Australian market. And then you can take that information and go and absolutely smash it on your own, or potentially become one of the small number of clients that we work with each week. To book your session, all you have to do is go to www.pumpedonproperty.com and click that book your free strategy session button. But either way, we wish you all the best on your journey as an investor to financial freedom.